Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is wither. Let's take a look at some of the definitions or ways that we use this verb. The first way you're likely to hear wither used is to mean to become dry and shriveled. So many times the way you hear this verb used is in connection to plants. So these could be our flowers in the summer when there's not enough water or rain. They become dry and start to shrivel and die. People will use it with crops as well, so any type of plant. A second way you hear wither used is in connection more with people. So here we're describing a person who is maybe shrinking, getting smaller, maybe getting more wrinkly from old age or perhaps an illness or disease. A third way you hear the verb wither used is to mean to weaken or cause something to decline. So here we might be talking about kind of the quality of something going down or even the existence of something. You should know the verb wither is a regular verb. To make the progressive tense, all you need to do is add ing to form withering. The past tense and participle forms of this verb can be made by adding ed. Our base verb, wither, ends in a voiced R sound. So our past tense ending is just going to make a D sound. It should sound like this: withered, withered. Okay. Now, there is a phrasal verb that you'll hear quite often with wither, and that's wither away. You're going to see here that some of the meanings are going to be quite similar to those earlier definitions we looked at. So the first way, again, wither away is used is to mean to dry or shrivel up or die, and this is generally due to a lack of water. An example of this might be, many crops withered away this summer during the drought. You know, there are many regions, many countries who've experienced drought, not having enough rain, not enough water really to continue the process of having crops grow. And so some of those crops have shriveled and died without producing food. A second way you hear wither away used is to mean to fall into decline or to have something kind of decay. An example of how I heard this used recently was, support for the campaign has withered away. So this particular article I was reading was about a particular candidate whose kind of support, the excitement people had once for this particular person, right? It's going away. It's declining. And the article went on to explain maybe why that has happened, but it still means it's in the decline, and that's generally not a good thing. A third way you hear wither away used is very similar to the second definition we looked at earlier. So here, many times we're talking about people becoming older, becoming aged. Another word you might hear with that is decrepit. So an example of this: I'm not going to wither away in a nursing home. Okay, so I feel like this has come up recently with some older family members who are rather resistant to the idea of living in a facility with other people who are aging or getting older. Now, let's practice using our verb of the day in a couple different verb tenses. Today, we'll practice the present progressive, which is also known as the present continuous, and the simple future with a focus on be going to. Let's talk about the present progressive. We use this verb tense to talk about something that is happening right now or an action that is in progress during a time period that has not yet completed. Okay? So to make the present progressive, I need two parts. which is one reason I like using this particular form of the verb tense. So present progressive, 2 P's, it helps me remember 2 parts to my verb. So the first part is going to be the present form of be. That's am, is, and are. And then I'm going to use the ing form of the verb. Let's take a look at an affirmative example. Our basil is withering from the cold and turning black. So in different parts of the world, it's starting to get colder. It's certainly getting colder where I live, especially at night. And so we tried to keep some of our plants, some things in our garden for as long as possible. But now some of them, because of this cold, they're starting to die. And that's what that sentence is describing. If I want to make a negative present progressive sentence, what I'm going to do is start with my subject, then I use be, then I have not, and then the ing form of the verb. Here's another example. These bands aren't withering away into old age. They're still making great music. I saw some sentences very similar to this, describing a band that had initially started together back in the 70s, so a really long time ago, but they're continuing to tour and make new music. So here the idea is they're not getting old and kind of falling into decline or becoming so old they're not able to do this any longer. Finally, we can ask a yes or no question in the present progressive. To do this, I start with a form of be, whichever form matches my subject, and that subject comes next, then the ing form of the verb. Here's another example. Is democracy withering away before our eyes? So in the United States right now, there is there are always so many problems, so not unusual. But there are many people who are concerned about our upcoming election and if the results of local and state election results will be respected or followed, or are there going to be people who are kind of like, no, I didn't lose, and refusing to admit defeat? And connected to this are many other things, and people kind of wonder, like, oh, is our form of government, is it in the decline? Is it in the process of dying? That's what that question is asking. Now let's turn and look at the simple future. There are many ways to talk about the future in English. Pardon. Wow. As we discuss this today, I'm going to focus on using be going to. It's really common to hear people use this when they're talking about their plans. They might also use it to make predictions about things they think are going to happen in the future. And when I use be going to, I'm going to use a present form of be in all of these forms. So when I make a sentence in the affirmative or positive, I start with my subject, and then I use am, is, or are. Then I use going to and the base verb. So an example might be, the city is going to wither and die if our largest employers leave. So sometimes you will see wither and die used in conjunction like it was in this sentence. Here, someone might be making a prediction if the city doesn't take action to help businesses stay here, right? Then no one is going to want to live in this particular city if there are no jobs or no good jobs, as it may be. If I want to make a negative simple future sentence, my structure will be to have my subject, then am, is, or are, based on what my subject is, then not, then going to, and the base verb. Another example, this team isn't going to wither in the second half. So I heard a sentence like this as I was watching some sports recently. An announcer, right, was suggesting they're not going to fall apart. They're not going to decline. This team is too strong. Finally, we can ask a yes or no question. In the simple future, to do this, we, again, start with a form of be, whichever form matches our subject. That subject comes next. Then we have going to and the base verb. Here's another example. Are these seedlings going to wither before they ever come into bloom? So again, here I might be asking someone to make a prediction. Do you think these little plants that are just starting to grow, are they going to die before they ever bloom? Now, let's take a moment to look at some words and a phrase related to wither. And the first word I think you might encounter is the adjective withering. So I feel like I've seen this a lot in literature to describe a person, perhaps a look, but usually it means something is devastating, either in cutting down something or destroying something. So we might think of this as being rather harmful. An example of this might be, there's been a withering storm of criticism, and he eventually resigned from his position. So here, because this happens all too frequently, maybe we can picture a person who has said something or done something really awful, right? And then so many people are talking about what this person said, what this person did, and how they should not hold a particular job because of their actions or their words. And so it is devastating, this criticism, and it results in someone losing their job. Now, a phrase you might hear is to wither on the vine. So if you see this phrase used, it generally means that something is not being used or not being implemented. So many times it's referring to ideas, concepts, maybe a new product, something new, and these things don't get used or they are not implemented many times just because of an action. People are distracted, they're not paying attention, they're not thinking about something. So an example of this might be, all of my ideas wither on the vine because the team lead is distracted. So we can imagine maybe an employee, a worker, saying something like this. They take good ideas to their supervisor, their team lead. Hey, why don't we try this? What about that? Maybe this would be better. But nothing ever happens. These ideas aren't used. These ideas aren't implemented. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.